Okay, it is 5:31, almost 5:32. Let's get started. I know we've got quite a few people still in the process of joining, and we had, Kathy says, well over 80 registrations for tonight's roundtable. So those logins will continue to trickle in, but let me get started with a brief intro and then we'll dive right into the content. So good evening again, and welcome to PDActive's Community Sharing Virtual Roundtable. My name is Todd Morrish and Monique Buffler and Kathy Ball. You guys can wave so they know who you are. Monique and Kathy we'll all be your moderators this evening. Our topic tonight, building your PD care team. And I guess one thing I should mention right up front is that if you guys could please do us a big favor and keep yourselves muted until you have a question, that would be great. I do hear some background noise right now. So Kathy, if you are able to mute all, I will unmute myself.
Started hiking back up and had to hike up this 2-mile switchback. It was very sunny.
Let's see, it looks like Judith needs to mute herself. I've got that. Okay, there. We have a lot to cover this evening and only 90 minutes to squeeze it into, or 88 at this rate. But before we introduce our community panelists, just a few quick points. If you are new to PDActive, by all means, check out our plethora of movement classes and support groups and other speaker events, and even some of our social events. And I'll give you a couple of examples of those coming up in a minute here. You can learn more about these on our website, and Monique will paste the link to our calendar into our Zoom chat window now. By the way, that chat feature I'm referring to can be opened from the tool tray at the bottom of your Zoom window. Clicking on the chat icon should open the chat panel on the right side of your Zoom window if you're not familiar with this feature. We will use this tool to send bits of info to you that you may wish to copy and paste somewhere else for future reference. Upcoming events, let's talk about those for a minute. In August, we have the first part of a 2-part roundtable event all about the PD and the gut microbiome. So the first event will be an educational talk, and the second event will actually be in September, and it will be a clinical trial opportunity for people involved that could come and participate then. More information coming out about that and these other ones I'm referring to now soon. September Speaker Forum will be September 30th. We'll be on the topic of wearables, i.e. smart devices, in this case an Apple Watch, and DBS, getting your PD data directly to your doctor. Very interesting. Again, more information coming out on that as well. And then the social event I referred to earlier is our annual fall picnic, and that will be taking place at Sunday, October 15th at Live Oak Park in Berkeley. If you didn't write those down, don't worry. Maybe we can get them into the chat window, or we'll be getting them out in upcoming emails and newsletters. PDActive depends on donations to bring programs and events like this to our members free of charge. If you value these sessions, please consider making a contribution via our website, and we will try to put that link in the chat window now. And consider maybe becoming a monthly donor to sustain these events. That's the ability to create a recurring monthly event, a recurring monthly payment without you having to do it manually every time. There's also a green donate button on the upper right-hand corner of the PDActive homepage. Okay, as for this event, once our speakers have all introduced themselves and given us a high-level summary of their journeys, we will have an extended Q&A window. There will be no presentations in this event, as there are sometimes with our speaker forums. If you have questions or comments during the talk, you may submit those via the Zoom chat feature we mentioned, or you may use Zoom's raise hand feature if you know how to do that. Monique and Kathy and I will do our best to field those questions as they come up. And in the interest of keeping our discussion on point, we will try to save any questions about specific doctors, recommendations on specific doctors or providers until later in the session. One important note, this webinar is being recorded, and we will post that recording to our PDActive YouTube channel in the next couple of days. And we will put that link to our PDActive YouTube channel in the chat window now also. I haven't been checking my chat window. I'm sure it's blowing up right now. Finally, to help our community panelists better understand their audience, we will present you with just a few short questions during the talk. which will pop up on your Zoom screens. Please answer these as quickly as you can so that our panelists may respond to them in the flow of their discussion. If you prefer to not answer the questions, that's just fine. Merely close the windows when they pop up. We'll start with one or two right now. I'll throw it up here for folks to give us about 30 seconds to give an answer. I'll let that play out for another 30 seconds and then I'll publish the results. But without further delay, PD Active is pleased to introduce our panelists for this evening's roundtable, Kathy and Dan Friel. Why don't you guys raise your hands so folks can see who you are? Let's see, I don't have them on my screen, but I'm sure they're there. They are. Thank you. Kathy has PD, Dan does not, but thanks for joining us tonight, guys. And then Carrie and Mark. Carrie and Mark, there you are. Thanks for waving. Carrie has PD, Mark does not. Kathy and Dan, let's start with you. I know you've given talks on this topic before, so we'll have you get the ball rolling for us. That's all right.
Sure.
Kathy, why don't you start by giving our audience a high-level overview of what it's been like building your PD care team?
Sure.
And then let's hear from Dan on what you feel, Dan, the role of an effective and meaningful partner is in this process. And we'll point out you both are non-Kaiser or PPO, correct?
That's correct.
So Carrie and Mark are Kaiser. So our listeners tonight will have a perspective on both fronts, but take it away. Let me publish this real quick, Kathy, before you.
Sure.
It looks like it's a pretty even split. I'm going to go with exactly 50-50 right down the middle. Great. All right. Well, that gives us a little perspective. I will probably pop up another one of these, Kathy, and I hope it doesn't distract you, but it'll start to give some more feedback on our demography out there.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks so much for having us. So yeah, I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and of course, like everyone at this forum that has PD, when they first get diagnosed, you go into shock. And so you need something. You're not sure what it is yet because you don't even have a handle on what PD is perhaps, or where your disease is going to go. But I knew that I needed, I should also kind of backstep. I am an RN, so I sort of know what the medical field is like, and I knew I needed to see the best. But at the time, I knew I had symptoms that were symptomatic of PD, but I could only see a general neurologist. And after I was diagnosed, he suggested that I see the specialists. And so then I learned about what a movement disorder specialist is. And they have an extra year of training just in Parkinson's. And so they are the specialists, and they know so much more about the medications, the various treatments, such as, deep brain stimulation, and they also, many of them do research. So I knew that this doctor was going to be an important part of my care team. And fortunately for me, I liked her a lot. And I think that's really important. I did see I did go to Stanford, and I saw a doctor there that I didn't like as much. So I think that's a really important thing, to not only see the specialist, but also feel really good about that doctor, that you can be honest with the doctor and have open communication. And she gives me a lot of time. And so that's really an important beginning as far as establishing your care team, because that doctor is really going to help guide you with the best course of treatment for your disease and your symptoms. And then from there, obviously, I should have backtracked a little bit I started with my husband, Dan, and my family, my 2 children. And so that's really important to have an individual in your life, whether it's your partner, your spouse, a friend, someone that can just be there with you through it all each day, and also to go on doctor appointments with you, because there's oftentimes Dan will see things that I'm not, reporting to the doctor. And so it's really helpful to have him there as well. So that was sort of how I got started building my care team.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah.
You've already nailed one of Dan's or one of the partners' roles, and that is to sort of be a second set of ears and a second set of ideas. So Dan, do you want to fill in any blanks on that?
I think it has helped us that Kathy had such a strong medical background,
Sure.
and she was very fit and committed to staying active physically. And I really believe that's helped limit the progression.
Hmm.
And her specialist has said that almost every year that we go in for a in-office visit, she's surprised at the lack of progression. And so, you know, as a spouse, I have just tried to adjust my hours so that we do a hike or a cross-country ski or something physical when the medications kick in.
Hmm.
The window is open for Kathy.
Hmm.
Because that window varies,
Yeah.
as most people on this call will know.
Hmm.
So we've become much more flexible
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So prioritizing your schedule around hers is important for a partner.
It's been really
Absolutely.
helpful.
Absolutely. And again, it's put my whole life into perspective, right? How
Mhm.
fortunate I am. I mean, Kathy lived a exemplary life in terms of never overindulging in anything and being healthy.
She's an RN. She's seen the negative downsides of all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a drag. I wish I'd done more crazy things, but
As I like to say, you can't control the
Yeah.
cards you're dealt.
yeah,
Right.
You can only play them the best you can.
yeah, going forward, you try to do the best you can. And that's kind of the way I've been living my life since diagnosis. Just trying to surround myself with people that care about me, that can help me live the best life I can, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest takeaways of a care team, and who you choose as individuals, whether they're doctors, whether they're professionals, whether they're just, you know, one of them I would consider is my Pilates instructor. You know, she's here every week and she cares about me and she hones in on what I need physically.
Sure.
So
Well, who better to be on your team and to be a starring role on your team than the person that knows you best, right?
that's right.
So in this little poll that I threw up while you were chatting, the nice news is that the majority of our attendees today have a spouse or partner helping them. So excellent work. Check off the first box. You've got a good partner in this journey.
I'm so lucky.
Let's see, somebody might be trying to share a screen.
Yeah.
Let's ask, I don't know who Y Nostroza is, but if you could stop sharing screen,
Mhm.
maybe I can take it away from her. Interesting. You better be careful what you're searching for. We can all see it.
Holly, can you hear us? I'm not sure if you can hear us, but you're
No.
sharing your screen with the webinar.
Holly, if you can go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and click the share screen feature and unshare. Holly, can you hear us? Awkward. Let's see if I can do it. Hang on a second, everybody. Got it. Okay, sorry about that little interruption. That's a decent segue anyway, so let's jump right into Carrie. Tell us a little bit about your journey building your care team under the Kaiser umbrella. And Mark,
Yes.
maybe Mark, you can share with us any key learnings, good or bad, from your perspective to date, and things that folks might not have thought of, for example, if they're in the process of building their team, good or bad.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having us, and thank you to everybody who's here. And I will say that my experience has been very similar to Kathy's, with the exception of I am not in the medical profession, and I did used to overindulge a lot. But other than that, everything else is similar. So I was diagnosed in 2019, 4.5 years ago. I guess I'll try to bring up new points that Kathy didn't get a chance to. Another important member of my team is my physical therapist. And I was very fortunate because I actually, one of my symptoms at first was muscle rigidity, and I couldn't put weight on my foot. And so I already had an appointment at the physical therapy department the day after my diagnosis, just coincidentally. And when I when I got there and talked to her about it, it ends up, she actually specializes in movement disorders, or I guess neurological disorders.
Mhm.
And so she's been great, teaching me all kinds of exercises and just helping me see my progression.
Mhm.
I see her probably once every 6 months, unless there's something else going on. But
You
yeah,
see the movement disorder specialist every 6 months.
the physical therapist, sorry,
Physical therapist. Okay, good.
correct. And then another one that hasn't been mentioned yet is mental health. So I have both a psychiatrist who's at Kaiser, who's great. And then my therapist is outside Kaiser, which is a whole other topic because Kaiser therapy, if you've ever tried to get a therapist at Kaiser, is very challenging. Yeah.
Yes.
But both have been helpful also in the journey. And for me personally, I've just found being very open about it has helped a lot. I mean, that's my personality to begin with. So
Mhm.
it's not going off script, but I've been able to get more support, I feel like, by being open.
Good. Let's see what folks think about when it comes to the team players, and then we're going to start to discuss that a little bit. So most people in our attendance tonight are pretty sure they know who all should be on our caregiving team, quote unquote. A few have no clue. Good for you for being honest. And a few are quite certain. So let's take a minute then, and let me read down through a list. I've done my own little bit of homework here. I stole Mark's thunder here. Mark, any ideas? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but what can you think back on the journey to date anyway? And tell us a little bit about any gotchas, maybe a good one that surprised you, or maybe one that could have tripped you up and we should all know about it.
Well, I don't know about gotchas. One thing I was gonna, and I'll see if something comes to me. One thing that comes to mind, Carrie did a bunch of research early on about diet and how that can positively and negatively affect the Parkinson's. And I do all the cooking. I was directly involved in that. And we pretty much cut out all meat other than fish. We cut out dairy for a while, but cheese is so hard to give up that for us that I don't know. You're still pretty good about no dairy, except when we indulge with some cheese. But and then
that's a hard one for me too. That dairy.
Yeah, it's been a lifelong, or at least as long as we've been together, to try to get her to eat more vegetables. And now I have more reason to tell her to eat more vegetables.
Good. Well, you just pegged another role for the partner, everybody out there.
That's right.
Help with the diet.
And then one other thing, I mean, maybe it was apparent, but and Dan kind of touched on this, another set of eyes, things like the frequency of dyskinesia in Carrie's situation, and when or tremors, and I think I've got to believe for somebody that's in it, like Kathy or Carrie or all anybody on here that's got PD, that may not be as apparent, but when somebody outside or a caregiver or partner can see that, I think it can be super helpful, especially when you're talking to the physical therapist or a neurologist.
Exactly. I completely agree. Because my movement disorder specialist says a lot of times people don't even realize they're having dyskinetic movements. They don't bother them in the beginning. And so whenever she asks me at the appointments, she'll say, any dyskinesias? And I look at Dan like, do I? I don't always, I think I might. I'm like, is that dyskinesia? So you're exactly right. That's why it's so helpful to have that special person who's with you all day, every day, or not all day, but each day, most days, can report what they're seeing. And then the other thing is sleep. I don't realize sometimes I talk out in my sleep, talk out loud. And so Dan will remind me of that, which is horrifying, but
if you just talk out loud, then you're luckier than I can tell you. Lashing out in my sleep is something my wife needs to wear armor for.
Yeah. Right. So,
I'll extend from my own experience the notion of sort of another pair of eyes and another set of understanding that the partner plays. It's nice to have that passive understanding when he or she knows what you're going through in a given moment. You know, your symptoms may not be showing outwardly, but inwardly you're feeling lousy.
Mhm.
And, you know, a lot of my friends know I've got PD, but they don't know exactly what the symptoms are, especially the non-motor. So if I'm having a particularly lousy day, I know tomorrow my wife will understand what's going on, and others might not. So it's nice to have that passive understanding right there next to you. So
Exactly.
it's an important role for you guys to know about.
Mhm.
I'll put in a plug too for PD Active, because that has helped me a lot. In the support groups, and then just meeting people, you know, who are around my age, who have around the same situation, you know, trying to figure
Mm.
out whether to keep working or not. Have kids who are, you know, still in their lives, even though ours are
Mhm.
19 and 20. They're not living with us, but they're obviously still in our lives, and
Mhm.
aging parents. So it's just really nice to have, you know, to have that support and know that there's others out there.
Yeah.
Exactly, Carrie. I'd like to add in on that too. I think you can consider the wider community when you're thinking about a care team, even though you think community, you know, shouldn't it be an individual person or an individual professional? But if you think about it, you know, for instance, for me, I became involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation's Team Fox events every year since I was diagnosed. And boy, have I found a great community of friends who have PD through that organization. And we meet every year. We do these bike rides. We meet in New York City and we celebrate our achievements at this MVP award ceremony. And it's the most uplifting thing. I'm all in, you know, like I'm going to go bigger. And every year I want to, you know, not only do the bike ride, but raise more money for the foundation, which goes completely to research.
Right.
And so it's just a really good, feel good, important component of my being able to manage my disease. And it's just, for me, it's sort of like a big old, you know, just a big, you know, support group.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that's a good example. The community / social element is so important for us. I mean, that's I will brag for PD Active, short of the big, wonderful Michael J. Fox and Davis Finney type organizations that put on neat events like that. We're trying to do something similar, just on a smaller, more local scale. So
Exactly.
need to have that sense of community and belonging and
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got one last poll question I'm going to put up here, but I'm also going to segue to, we had one poll question a minute ago asking folks if they feel like they know who should be on the care team. Let's sort of put that to the test a little bit. I will, and then I'd like to open, by the way, this is the last sort of lecture section of the talk, and then we'd like to open it up to Q&A. So if you folks have questions, I see that I've got 17 chats in my chat window. So maybe they're flying in and I've not been checking my chat, but we'd like to move to a Q&A discussion session in just a second here. I've got a list here of what I think are some of the members of a good PD team. Why don't I read a few and then you guys can both comment, Kathy and Carrie and Dan and Mark. And then I'll read a few more. I think I came up with 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And the one I didn't put on there is the one we realize is the most important, and that's partner. So partner first. Then there's the general practitioner.
Mhm.
And then a movement disorders, well, and then a neurologist, I would put that first. I'm not sure why, but then an MDS or a movement disorder specialist. So there's 4. In fact, I'll keep reading down the list and then you guys can give me any comments you've got on experiences that you've had. Psychiatrist, speech language pathologist or SLP, physical therapist, we talked about, occupational therapist, social worker, and then a DBS specialist as needed. So that was 9 or 10, including the significant other partner. What do you guys think about that list? Am I missing anything?
Well, you know, you can, there's so many, I mean, you can see a nutritionist could be a possibility because of all the food issues. Some people have problems swallowing, things like
Dietitian.
that, not getting enough protein in their diet. But I would go back to the physical therapist. You know, when I was first diagnosed, my neurologist actually suggested I see a physical therapist. And I kind of like looked at him like, well, why? I'm walking fine right now. but I didn't understand that it could be a problem down the road, that
Mhm.
gait and stability and balance and all of that. And he made me realize how important it is to kind of get ahead of it. You know, don't wait until you fall and then get physical therapy. Learn about balance and do balance exercises and things like that, and various strengthening exercises before you get worse. So it was really helpful to get established with a physical therapist, just like Carrie did, who I saw for a little while, because ironically, about a couple years in, I was running after my dog and froze and just about severed a ligament in my foot.
Pros as in freeze of gait.
Yeah, freeze of gait, and landed up on my toes like a ballerina, and snap went my
Oh.
ligament. So,
Oh, no, that's
and I
terrible.
needed physical therapy. I needed to be in a boot, and I needed, you know, to be on a walker for a little while, because I had to be non-weight bearing.
Mhm.
So really helpful to have already been established with a physical therapist, because I got right back to her and got going again with exercises. But I think it is good to think about prevention. So if you feel like this is a symptom, say swallowing is a problem, or that you might need a device around your house, you might need to see an occupational therapist for that, you know, for just various difficulties that you're having. It's good to get on things sooner than later, because you
Good.
don't want to get into difficulties down
That's
the road.
good advice. And the
Yeah.
nutritionist is the one I left off. Thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
Ian, Mark, what are your thoughts on that list?
It sounds good. I can't think, except for like I don't know if you included like the wider community that we were talking about, like support groups, et cetera. That's,
Oh, I didn't, but that's a very good observation. I mean, I think you might as well consider your support group part of your care team.
I think so, just answering questions and everything. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that Carrie has also been super active and trying to get the exercise that she needs, and I've got to believe that that has helped slow the progression for her as well. So I don't know how you quantify that, would be it a, you know,
A team member, yeah.
a Pilates instructor, or whomever it may be.
Well, if you've
I
got
think that-
I'd say if you've got a favorite, then why not include them on your list? I mean, when you start
Yeah.
thinking about your list of team players, and you leave off someone that makes you feel good when you're otherwise might feel lousy, that's a good team member.
Exactly. I think the care team, you should surround yourself with people that help you feel your best.
Mhm.
And
That's a
you
good
know,
definition.
you should tailor it to your own needs, whatever your needs are. And so if you want to consider your cycling class or whatever, your boxing class, that's hugely important. And
So whether
you don't
medically
have to always
trained or
say
not.
what exercise is the best exercise, the exercise you're going to do.
Next,
So
right.
who's the team you should have with you, the people that are really there for you, that really care
Yeah.
about you.
Good.
I would add, it is also nice to have, as part of those people with exercising, somebody who knows Parkinson's. So again, it's a plug for some of the PD active classes,
Mhm.
but I think that's very helpful. I do both. I kind of mix up both. PD, specific PD exercises and then others.
And you're an ace on the pickleball court. We all know that.
Yes, I love it.
All right. Well, this
You're
last
great.
poll, we'll just glance at this last poll and see that most folks are in process and building their team, getting their team in place. A few were good and honest and said just getting started, and everyone was honest and said, and no one said all set. So good for you all. I think it's an ongoing, never-ending process, really, to keep your team.
Yeah,
properly
I think
honed
there's
and-
some that are long-term and some that are short-term, some
Yep.
you don't always need all the time, just
Right.
as, as you run into problems.
Sure. All right. Well, I'm going to remove polls from our screen so we can chat freely now. And let's open this up to questions. And I'll invite Monique and Kathy to chime in. I'm not caught up on the chat thread. So really quickly, I will say to Kieran, who asks, what does DVS stand for? I wasn't speaking clearly, Kieran. It's DB like boy, S, deep brain stimulation. Oh yeah, Mario answered for me. Sorry.
Thank you all
Catch.
so much.
So let's scan down through here and Monique and Kathy, if you guys see questions, we can alternate back and forth. But if anybody has a question themselves right now and would like to raise your hand or just speak up, we're all ears.
So Todd, let me ask one question that's come up a couple of times in the chat, and then we can turn our attention to, I think Vivian and Rosie both have their hands up.
Yeah, I see that. Great. Go ahead.
There's a lot of questions about Kaiser providers. And we see this a lot too on the support group emails. People are constantly wanting to know, navigating the Kaiser network. So I think Carrie and Mark, you guys are with Kaiser. Would you mind sharing some of the particulars of your care team in terms of the people that have been helping you, your your movement disorder specialist, and anybody else that you're seeing at Kaiser that you're happy with?
Yeah, do you want us to do that now or do that at another time, do you think?
Well, I think that what might be helpful is if you could just say the names of people, and then we will make sure to sort of compile a list afterwards and get it out to people in case people don't catch the names.
Okay, all right. My neurologist, a movement specialist, so that's Dr. Ash, and she is in San Francisco. My physical therapist is Chris, and I think it's Chin, just wants me to call her Chris. So, and she's in Oakland. My psychiatrist is Carla Avia Lee. So that's two last names, Avia and then Lee, L-E-E. My general practitioner is Florence, I can never pronounce her last name, Mint, M-Y-E-N-T is her last name. And
A neurologist out in Antioch for a while.
I did, she was great too. Dr. Weinstein, I think, yeah.
I will chime in just to tell folks that Kathy and Carrie have nicely offered to put their email addresses in the chat window so that if folks do have more specific questions about how do you like this doctor, or would you recommend this doctor, I've heard of this doctor, that kind of conversation we may have more time for at the end of this, but let's also focus for a little while on building the team. And then if we don't have any more time, then you guys can all blast emails off to Kathy and Carrie. Is that okay? Cool, but thank you.
Yeah, it looks like Rosie has her hand up.
Go ahead, Rosie. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. I'm wondering if people think having a care team means that they should communicate with each other, or is it our job to interpret back and forth?
Really great question.
That
Really
is
great
good.
question.
And that's, sorry, what were you saying, Todd?
You want to start that answer?
Oh, sure. That's where Kaiser is an advantage because everybody has access to each other's notes. So all of the care providers who are at Kaiser do. So that is an advantage. I mean, there's also some communication, obviously, that I need to do, but I would say pretty much across the board, all of mine are really good about having read up on my notes before my appointments.
Kathy, how's your experience been in communication category? Are your doctors able to communicate one with the other pretty well?
I think it's not realistic for doctors to communicate, for say a doctor to communicate with a physical therapist and vice versa. Everybody's just so busy, to be honest. It's really me that's the quarterback. So I will go to my physical therapist and say, this is what my doctor said. Although the physical therapist will send notes to the doctor and she'll know that I've seen the physical therapist. It's not like they're really getting together and saying, what are we going to do about Kathy's foot? You know what I mean? It's sort of, I'm the one coordinating kind of everybody on my team. I just think that's the reality of today's medicine versus, like, say, the Kaiser system where everyone is connected through notes, which is great. So.
Okay. Does that help, Rosie?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Vivian, you are next if you don't mind taking yourself off mute. How are you? We'll wait. There you
Okay.
go.
So I want to go back to the difference between a movement disorder specialist and a neurologist. I'm one of the people who's just beginning to get the team together. I
Mhm.
started with a diagnosis from a movement disorder specialist. And it was a UCSF, and I was okay with the diagnosis. He did the physical things and I had a lot of the symptoms. Okay. It's when they couldn't help. When Friday at 4:15, my eyelids started drooping and I called and nobody called back till Tuesday.
Hmm.
And then said to me, well, you should call the ER. I said, it's Tuesday. I called you Friday afternoon.
Mhm.
And so when I complained to him, he said, well, maybe you should get a local doctor. So I got a local doctor, and thank God I did, because she ordered an MRI of my brain to see where my Parkinson's baseline was. And the MRI technician was awake, and he saw a tumor the size of my fist behind my forehead. This is just a few months ago. And took it to the radiologist who was awake and called that new neurologist who I'd never met. And she called a neurosurgeon, and within 45 minutes, they had everybody lined up to deal with this tumor, which was huge. So I still have Parkinson's. Apparently the tumor's here and the Parkinson's is back here, but I'm not so sure. That was a long way to say
I
whose
think,
job is what.
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's when I mentioned, make sure you feel good about the doctor. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a movement disorder specialist. It can be a general neurologist. If that doctor is going to respond to you, that's the most important thing. And if you feel that doctor is knowledgeable enough to take care of you, and it sounds like this doctor is, that's the most important thing. I feel for myself, having seen a general neurologist and having seen 2 movement disorder specialists, it's clear that they know a lot more about the Parkinson medications and the treatment options, and they actually do research. But you have to feel good about that doctor as well. Now, to also say, I see a movement disorder specialist at UCSF, and it's very difficult to get a hold of anybody by the phone.
Yeah.
So I don't even call anymore. I just email my doctor, and she emails me right back.
So you would email your doctor with a question for the MDS, and she would forward or create that.
She herself, the MDS, responds back to me like within hours. And if she's out of the country, it's her nurse who gets back to me.
Got it.
So
Well, lucky you.
I never call, because you just go into this void of who knows where your call is going.
Yeah.
So you do have to find out the best way to contact your doctor. And with her, it's this message through the My Chart app, and she responds immediately. And she spends, I mean, I look at how much time she spends typing, and I'm thinking, and she's not charging me. This is amazing, because it's a lot of her time.
Yeah.
So
Vivian, it sounds like you already did this, but I think for everybody else, you have, in the current state of our medical systems, be it Kaiser or non-Kaiser, I've got to believe both are the same, you have to advocate for yourself. And if you're not getting the answer that you want, or if it's not fast enough, you've got to rattle the tree and figure out who is going to help you out.
Could I ask, is the former movement disorder specialist that I had, is he still my movement disorder specialist?
only if you want him to be.
But if I
Good call.
wanted an appointment 3 months, out one, right? You have to wait 3 months, but he would still be in line to be there.
He should be, yes, he should be. And then you can choose to see a different doctor, maybe a different one in that practice. Or you could see your general neurologist if you're doing well with the medications you're on, and maybe just consult with a movement disorder specialist once in a while. So
I just don't know when I need one anymore. since she took the ball and
Yeah.
really ran with it and
Yeah.
did me a huge service.
I hear you completely.
And Mark makes a really good point. I mean, do understand that you can advocate for yourself probably more than you think you can, unless you're in the field like Kathy has been, and she understands the backdoor workings of institutions. Many of these institutions, and I think Kaiser as well, have patient advocacy groups where you can take your questions or concerns. And if they're open in terms of accessibility and responding to you, then you may get some good answers there. I've entertained going to Kaiser's, but some issues that I had a couple of years ago resolved themselves, so I never went to the patient advocacy group, but I know it exists because I started to look it up, and I think the others do.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I have a question for those of you who have experience with Kaiser. In my experience, it's hard to find a doctor who's taking, at least a few years ago, who's taking new patients.
Mhm.
And now that I do have a PD specialist in Walnut Creek, it takes me months to make an appointment, even if it's a video. And that particular doctor is also out of the office frequently. So I feel like I'm not I'm not getting the best connection. I'm wondering if that's typical, or are there others
Well, I'll
facilities that
give you a quick
have better
response.
experience?
Carolyn, I'll give you a quick response, and then I definitely want to hear from the panelists. I know from research that I've done that the medical field is a little bit overwhelmed with neurological problems and patients with neurological problems, specifically PD. As we all know, PD is quickly on the rise. It's not flat and it's not going down. And so I think we're outpacing the availability of quality neurologists and MDSs, but no, I don't want to take the floor away from our panelists. So Carrie and Kathy, and what do you guys think on that? And Michelle Johnston, we're coming to you next, Michelle, so hang tight.
I would agree. And I mean, I see my neurologist, I think once a year is what she said, which surprised me that it was so infrequent. But that's why I also have my, that's why I feel like that's why it's good to have the team approach, because I augment that with, my physical therapist and et cetera, all of those other people who can help me with other things. And like Kathy, mine is great about answering email quickly. So
yeah, I think it's important to find out, ask the doctor, what's the best way to communicate with you? Do you want me to email you or call, or what? And then I think when you leave the appointment, you make the appointment for the next appointment right there.
Yeah,
so that staff can get you in 6 months or whatever the time frame is.
Yeah, I confess I may be a little unique in that I've had a form of movement disorder for several decades, and I'm older and I have multiple issues. So it's a little tricky, not just Parkinson's, but so hard to coordinate the whole thing.
Let's change gears to Michelle Johnston, waiting patiently with her hand up. Michelle, don't forget to take yourself off mute. There you go.
Yes, I'm a retired nurse midwife, so I also have an understanding of the system. And I was faculty over at UCSF, so I find one thing that Kaiser provides, which really helps you be an advocate for yourself, whether you have medical experience or not, is the fact that they post every past visit you've had, and the doctor has to put a summary of the visit. And it's amazing what information you can get from just reading your summary from your previous visits. And so you can really advocate for yourself with that information, and you can look up results of labs. You don't have to wait 3 weeks for them to get back to you. So those things are very valuable for Kaiser members.
Yes, good point. I agree.
And I also want to point out, I don't know if you all have ever noticed on the Kaiser's website with the labs, you can actually track them over time. which is a really unique feature that they have with the kp.org, is that if you're watching a particular like blood level of something, you can actually track it over time, which is great.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. Okay, let's switch gears over to Andy. Hi, Andy. How you doing? Oops, take yourself off mute first. There you go. Not quite yet.
Yeah,
I'll
cue
cue
is
the,
not the icon, it's down at the bottom of your screen.
yeah, bottom left of your screen is another way to
Yeah.
unmute yourself, Andy. Keep that.
Unmute. Can you
There.
hear?
Yeah,
Now we got you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I switched over to another phone that I could concentrate. It
That's
wasn't
right.
gonna
We're
ring off the
patient.
hook, and now I don't know how to use it.
You beat the
Um,
Jeopardy music anyway, so you're fine.
Well, at least you didn't hear all the swear words. Sorry about that. And it was talking about the friendly frogs and stuff. Oh, now where am I gonna go with this? Shoot. See, that's what happens, a short-term memory loss. Oh, you all have been talking about Kaiser, and I don't have Kaiser, and I think it's wonderful to hear about that. I've got, poor people's insurance here over in the ghetto in East Oakland, and I'm totally thankful for it. I'm going back to UCSF. I have a neurologist that I've had 3 fabulous neurologists at Highland since I was diagnosed in 2012. And the one that I have now, I've been trying to get rid of for a couple of years. And every time they switch the doctor's name on my appointment, I'm thrilled. And then when I show up in the office, she walks in the door again.
Oh. Oh.
I had an appointment on my birthday a couple weeks ago, and she called me, and I was in the courthouse and couldn't take the call and just kind of yelled at her. And it was a wonderful feeling to kind of brush her off. But I'm going back to UCSF, and she was very snobby, and I wasn't up on my chart and stuff. And it's great that you can see everything on however you do it on Kaiser, but my chart has been saving grace for me now, and I'm on it regularly to see what they've said afterwards, because this particular doctor was mentioning how she said that this is okay. So I'm saying this for the very first time out loud. I'm going to try not to cry. You guys who know me know I get weepy. She said that that I should be cutting back on the new Pro patch and the Mirapax dosage. And I said that I had done that in the past, and I was finally at a level where I was comfortable and I felt everything was working very well. And I didn't want to screw with anything until things got worse, which is what I typically do. And she said, well, seeing that they don't even know if you've got Parkinson's now. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, when you went to the doctors at UCSF, that they said that they had mentioned that they weren't sure that you had it. And I was like,
And in that case, you couldn't see the charts.
And I never was looking at UCSF or at my chart or anything like that. And I didn't have anybody like Kaiser, whatever you've got, people saying you can see right afterwards. So now I'm going back to UCSF for my third opinion, I guess.
Where you've had better experiences so far, it sounds like, than Highland.
I'm sorry, pardon me?
And you've had better experiences at UCSF, it sounds like, than at Highland. Is that what you're?
No, I had a terrible experience at UCSF. I mean, it was very good. It was I've had very good experience at Highland, except for this latest doctor. My first, the one who first diagnosed me, got cancer and died very suddenly. And then I had another one, and then I had another one after that, who was the head of neurology. Great, but this one is awful. And anyway, the one at UCSF that I went 2 years ago, that I nobody followed up with me afterwards. So it's just been moderated, or whatever you want to call it. But the UCSF was the head of neurology there, who had a terrible, sorry, I'll try to cut it short here. Terrible bedside manner, absolutely terrible. And he came in with a team of like 4 or 5 other people. And I felt like I was in an interrogation room, but he was questioning and whatnot. And then the rest of the team they were the ones, you know, sort of speaking back and forth and speaking amongst each other. And they were the ones that made me feel okay. And when he got up and left the room, I was like, holy shit, like it's like I just murdered somebody and I was at the precinct, you know. And they calmed me down and they explained, yes, he doesn't have a very good bedside manner, but he's very thorough and blah, blah, blah. And it's true, he was very good. He just had a dreadful bedside manner. And the team was great, but then I was sent back to Highland after that. And I never went back to UCSF. So I had a couple of referrals and I'm finally going back there again in August. And the only people I've said about the questioning about the Parkinson's is my mother, who certainly wants to hear more.
Right.
But I don't want to say anything until I've been back to UCSF.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing this with you that I was diagnosed with essential tremor movement disorders and then YOPD in 2012. And I've been going through this and being part of this group and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the thought that people are questioning that I have it is a huge deal because it's been my life for 11 years. So anyway, my point being, making a long story longer, I'm glad to have my chart, and I'm very keen on reading up on what the doctors have said right after the fact, because the one thing that really bothered me, I was put on carbidopa, levodopa, Mirapex, the new Pro Patch, and one other, and then they had put me on the what's the
So Andy, let me jump in for just a second. I want to steer a couple questions from your experience, which is really meaningful and important to the panelists, because that's okay, not at all. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want people to understand that you're in a hard place because of the transition that you're in the middle of. Partly,
I'm in limbo.
Limbo, right? And so it's terrible.
Right now, actually.
It's terrible. It's terrible enough to have PD, let alone be in transition like this. Kathy, you brought up a term a few minutes ago.
Not know.
Yeah. Kathy, you brought up a term that I wanted to echo back and come back to again, which I had in my notes here, which is quarterback. We should talk about who should be our quarterback on our PD care team, because somebody like Andy could sure use one right now. And
yeah, I mean, I think, Andy, that sounds like a really tough situation you're in. And I think it goes to the point of how important it is to find one doctor that you feel really good about. And you're the person that can advocate for yourself for that. And anyone that puts you off or treats you terribly or however they made you feel, it's not a doctor that you want to consider.
Yeah, she said, oh, well, you don't remember what he said because you have problems with your memory because you were on, the pill that tries to help the dementia one. We've been, several of us have been on it. Well, you don't remember, and I thought I remember everything. And she's like, well, and then I went back and didn't realize that everything had been in my chart because it was so new to me back then.
Yeah. So anyway. See, now you're empowered with that. So now you have that to your advantage, that you can read up on everything and say to yourself, is this the doctor I want to stay with? And then you're going to make better decisions now because you're going to have information.
No, and she knew. And now I'm thrilled, but now I'm sort of terrified that I've been living and breathing and have gained some support and some strength.
Yes.
And feeling empowered.
Good for you.
Advocating for myself. And now if somebody tells me I don't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, Andy, I mean, the topic here tonight is how to build your care team. But honestly, if we need to also consider another really important role for this quarterback, whether it's your GP or a neurologist, somebody that you trust and you communicate well with,
fabulous,
is how is how to dump a dock,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So there's building and there's
Yeah.
purging. So
Getting rid of people that, that don't make you feel good. That's why I said you have to surround yourself with people that care about you. You know, that's the beginning of your care team. Who cares about you? People that, are there for you. And
Well, I
that,
had that doctor who was just fabulous, and then he just, I
Yeah.
went to him, and 7 days later he dropped dead.
Right.
And I was like,
I'm so
how
sorry.
can my doctor die when I have
know,
this? Like,
right?
he's feeling so selfish.
You're not allowed to, right?
Excuse me, did you not realize that, like, you were my doctor? I mean, like,
Right, exactly. I know.
way to laugh about it, Andy. Way to laugh about it.
let that out. I have advocated, and I do have a good primary care physician who's very understanding and whatnot.
Good.
He knows about how I feel about the other doctor and dumping her and whatnot. So I am trying to remain positive and move forward with whatever happens. And I'm
100%.
thankful for the support that I've had and will continue to have. I know you guys are
Good
great.
for you. Well, good luck.
Good luck.
And
You're always
sorry,
welcome to use a
I have to shut my
roundtable as a
microphone
support
off
group.
now.
Mhm.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up, and if I'm missing them, Monique and Kathy. Oh, Gary, you don't look like Gary, but
Maria had her hand up.
okay, hang on. I've just responded to Gary Goodman, but
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that I didn't hear people mention. A pain specialist.
oh, good one.
And
Yeah.
if you are at Kaiser, the pain clinic at Kaiser has recently been improved significantly. It's got a new head of the department, and it's changing a lot of things, including they have their own PT, they have their own acupuncturist, they have their own gym. Anyway, the pain specialist, Dr. Grobard, is the head of the pain clinic, and he's a good guy. And if any of you have dealt with pain and the regular docs being pressed to cut you off your pain meds, you might want support from somebody else. He can't prescribe, but he can urge your doc to do the right thing. The other thing I wanted to mention along the same lines is a pharmacist. So through the pain clinic and another program that I was involved in with them, I got my own personal pharmacist. And the docs basically consult with the pharmacist to find out what to prescribe you, right? But then they give you 4 of this and 5 of this and 2 of that, but not a real schedule about how to take the different pain meds. For example, how do you coordinate the Lyrica with the Norco with the acetaminophen, right? Anyway, a pharmacist is a great addition to your team.
Good for you. I know you're not Gary. What is your name?
I am Gary.
You are. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was swapping emails with you earlier, and I was incorrectly picturing a man on the other end of the email. So sorry about that.
It's very confusing, Todd.
Well, nice to have you on, Gary. Thank you for increasing my list by 3. Pain management, and pharmacist 2.
I wanted to second that about the pharmacist, and it's not even really just for pain management. My husband, who has Parkinson's, was recently referred to a pharmacist. This is within Kaiser, and he's been seeing the pharmacist pretty regularly to do his medication adjustments for Parkinson's. And so the pharmacist is just sort of much more knowledgeable about the dosage and the timing, and much more accessible too. He's easier to get an appointment with. So he had, regular appointments with him for every 4 weeks until the medication regime got better. And I think that Kaiser's doing that a lot more.
Yes, I think it's deliberate on their part, because I had my doc refer me to pharmacists for little issues as well as big.
That's good to know. Thank you.
You do get to know your pharmacist. You're there a lot, picking up a lot of medication. Sometimes I have some of the cashiers look at me and go, "Are you taking all of those?" Like, not that I want to, but yes, I am.
Well, I actually have, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I had a negative experience where it would have been nice if somebody had talked to a pharmacist, because it just so happened that both my neurologist and my psychiatrist were both out on vacation at the same time.
Mm.
And another neurologist prescribed amantadine, and I have a history of depression, and so, but nobody said anything about that. And
So the substitute neurologist prescribed something new that wasn't on your regimen yet?
correct.
That sounds like a bad flaw.
It was terrible. And it wasn't until, and we couldn't get answers, and it was really bad.
Ooh.
And then it was actually in a PD support group where somebody said, oh yeah, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess everybody could bookmark that as a what not to do. I
Yeah.
think that sounds dangerous. So good tip, Carrie. I'm looking at the chat here and I see somebody asking where the raise hand feature is. If
Yeah,
that's
Nancy.
Nancy Roylance, if you're
Yeah.
still on with us, Nancy, chime in. We're all ears. And then I see Vivian's got her hand back up. Nancy, you out there?
Yes, thank
There
you.
you are. Great.
I'm hearing that it's important to have like a general neurologist. I have a movement specialist, but sometimes I have questions that aren't related to movement.
But they are related to Parkinson's?
Yes, and my movement specialist has made it very clear that he's a movement specialist and doesn't really go into the regular neurology area. Does that?
So can I clarify what you're saying? So the movement specialist said they just focus on movement? Because
Yes.
most movement disorder specialists focus on all areas of Parkinson's,
Yeah,
non-motor and motor. So that's interesting that that's what this one doctor said. Because that would be confusing for you to go back and forth to a general neurologist and then a movement disorder specialist. I mean, in my opinion, but which doctor do you like the best? I mean, which one do you feel is more knowledgeable or gives you better?
I don't have a regular neurologist.
Oh.
So I'm floundering.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but what were the neurology? So what would be a reason you would see a neurologist?
I mean, other than PD?
Yeah, so that's what I guess I was trying to figure out.
Well, I don't know if this directly answers your question, but it's a little complicated because I have the orthostatic hypotension from PD, and that's the one that's really given me the crazies because I feel so bad with that.
And is that because of the medication?
No, because they can't get my blood pressure regulated.
Okay, so it's outside of the medication, you have it anyway, like even if you weren't on PD medication, you would get orthostatic hypotension potentially.
Yes, and I'm taking 2 medications for that, but it's just not working. And I know this is going into a different subject, but I can't get a response from this large medical group. They're so busy, like was said earlier.
Do you see your regular general doctor for it then, or who treats you for the orthostatic hypotension?
The doctor at the big group that is too busy. So they've said, well, my last appointment was in May. I couldn't get another appointment until December 26th. And I'm new to this, so I need some guidance. And so they said, well, you can talk to the physician assistant. And other people have said, no, you need to be able to contact your neurologist, but they said no.
Can you reach them by Can you reach them by email?
No. And it even says, so I put all these questions and situation out in an update and didn't hear back, but it says there to call if you haven't heard back. And I did that, and that's when they said, nope, he's just too busy.
And where does your general physician fit into all this,
I was
Nancy?
gonna ask.
My primary care,
Primary care, yeah.
um,
Is someone you can trust and use as a bit of a hub and a quarterback to get communications in and out of the neurology department?
well, they're in two different systems.
Oh.
Yeah, I go to Sutter, and I guess it just, I don't want to badmouth them, but so I feel it's Stanford that is not being accommodating other than the PA. So I just, and
maybe try backtracking to your primary care physician and explaining to him or her that you've got this log jam and you're trying to get answers from people that are not responding because they're too busy. Is there a different direction that you can go in?
I haven't said that specifically. Maybe I said that I was having troubles, but yeah. Somebody mentioned about let's see, a patient advocates group.
Patient advocacy.
Would that, if I went to them, is that something that they could help me with?
Yeah, your primary care is with Sutter.
Yes.
So Kathy, please dive in and correct me, but I would go to the Sutter website and find their search tool and put in patient advocacy and see what you get back, because there may be an email address you can send. I mean, patient advocacy should not be confused with customer support where somebody calls or emails because they've got a problem with it. I mean, because they've got a complaint, but you're having a challenge getting information on your physical health and you need help. So a patient advocacy group is going to probably be able to clear those blockades and put you in touch with someone that can help you.
Okay, even,
What do you think, Kathy? Am I near in the ballpark
I
on that?
would, yeah, that, or, I mean, I might just make an appointment with your general doctor. And when you're there, ask your general doctor to get in touch with the the movement disorder specialist and explain that this is a problem. Since if they're saying they're too busy to respond to you, sometimes doctor to doctor, they can sometimes connect.
yeah.
That's just been my experience, but.
So the Sutter primary care would contact the specialist at Stanford.
Right.
Even though they're in different.
Yeah, no, they can absolutely have a conversation.
Oh.
It might be what you should do is go there physically and say, please, connect with this doctor. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We're going to make an actual appointment with your primary care and then explain to them what your issues are.
So I wouldn't be a meddling person, not meddling.
It's your health. You need to
meddle and whine as much as you need to
advocate for yourself, because nobody else will. You have to do it yourself. And
never think that you're being a pain with the medical field, because it's like she said, nobody else will do that.
Right.
Okay.
And if they make you feel guilty, like you're being a bother.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not good.
That's not good. They're not the right kind of people that you want.
All right. Well, let's move on a little bit, Nancy. I've got some other hands. Yeah, no problem. If you have other questions or want more clarification, raise your hand again and we'll come back. But Paul, I see you haven't chimed in yet, so I see your hand up. So we'll start with you and then we'll go back through the list. I see Robert and Andy and Vivian still with hands up. Can you take yourself off mute, Paul? There you go.
Yeah. So I would give a couple of suggestions. One is that if you're at UCSF, you can get into the study. And being in the study, you're a lot more personable with those docs. And they give you your primary as far as the Parkinson's is concerned. The other thing is, I think, well, I'm forgetting that one right now. So I'll say that. So is try to get into a study. The potential there is very good.
Let me see if I can recap for you, Paul. You're saying one way to break the communication log jams might be to get into a specific study.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay, that's a good tip. If you find, Nancy, that might be another angle into groups. If you find that Stanford might be offering a study in an area that would make sense for you to give a try, then you could ask your general or your PCP about that. See if that might be one way to get into getting someone's direct attention. Thanks, Paul.
Sure.
Vivian, you've been in front of the line for a little while. What's a question you've got?
Actually, I wanted to respond to Andy. I've had essential tremors for 45 years maybe. And when they were first diagnosed, I was told I would not get Parkinson's. They're going to be two separate things. And I had essential tremors from which I take medication. When I got diagnosed with the Parkinson's 2 or 3 years ago, I still had essential tremors. So I'm on 2 sets of medicines that do 2 entirely different things, as far as I can tell. And I still have tremors, but not as badly. They're being modified. So I just wanted to fill you in on that. It's possible to have both.
Okay. Thank you, Vivian. Andy, since she was chatting with you, you got any questions or answers? Uh-oh, we got our mute problem again. Just like cue the Jeopardy music.
Sure. Sing it.
Do, 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 do. It's okay, we'll come back to you. Robert.
Well, it's actually
Okay,
June.
you unmuted me.
Thank you, June. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry, June. We'll come right back. Hang on, hang tight. Don't go anywhere. Okay, Andy, make it a quick one.
I'm sorry. Okay, quick one was when we're talking about the movement disorders, the specialist instead of the neurologist, the movement disorder specialist, going to them. Now it's the movement disorder specialist.
You can say
Is
MDS.
a neurologist, correct?
Correct.
And so I'm wondering, because I have other things like the voice that is lowered over the years, that then my olfactory senses, I haven't, been able to smell or taste for over 4 years now. Are there, who tests for things like that? Is that something that you can test for? Like, nobody's ever told me that I will smell again, or, who do I ask about things like that? A movement disorder specialist or the neurologist or my
Whichever one you trust more and get the best responses from, for starters.
I guess I've asked and nobody's done anything. So I'm wondering if there's any testing that anybody has had. That's my question.
I don't know about olfactory senses. Kathy, any ideas on your end?
No, I mean, so it was the lack of sense of smell. And what was the first thing?
Speaking.
My voice is lower.
Your voice is lower. Yeah, which is a typical symptom of Parkinson's as well, soft voice.
Yeah.
And so I guess
olfactory senses is the most the one that I would like to have tested the most, because that's
well, maybe let them know that you want testing and see what they have to offer.
I just was wondering if anybody knew anything about it or had.
Yeah, the Fox Foundation had something they were putting out there. Did you see that?
I did, and I am part of a lot of those PPI studies.
Yeah,
and
they had people do the sniff test. Yeah. Okay.
On the speech front, Andy, I can tell you that the Pediactive not long ago had on a roundtable much like this, a speech language pathologist from the Bay Area. If you want to go to that link that Monique pasted into the chat earlier on, where our YouTube channel has got historical roundtables, you could listen through to that and get some ideas on speech language pathologist or SLP. But let's move on a little bit. June, I'm sorry we baited and switched you, but go for it.
Well, I just want to speak in favor of the PA. The PA is in the office with the doctor. The PAs are well trained. And if you go to the PA when you can't see the doctor, the PA will talk to the doctor. And sometimes the doctor will even come in and see you while you're seeing the PA. So don't turn down a PA.
And just to be clear, that's the physician's assistant.
Physician's assistant.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a
And
fair point.
I can advocate for nurses too. I worked for 40 years in nursing. Many patients would call and just ask for me because they knew they couldn't get the doctor. So if I couldn't answer their question, I would then take the chart and go to the doctor and say, you know, this patient needs a response here. And he or she would say, you know, here's what you can tell her, or have her make an appointment type of a thing. But so you're right. It is important to utilize whoever is in that office that can help you.
Michelle Johnston, you have another question? Take yourself off mute. Cannot hear you. There you go.
Yeah, so it's about the sense of smell. I got tested for my sense of smell and was told I was in the 4th%. So 96% of people did better than me, but the test was flawed. And what they did is they had me scratch and sniff, and they would say, does that smell like a rose or tobacco or smoke? And I would say, it doesn't smell of anything. They say you have to pick one. And so I pick one, and it's like I've got a 1 in 4 chance of being right. And a 3 in 4 chance of not being right. But so it just didn't seem very useful. But it was for scratch and sniff cards.
Has anyone else on the roundtable here had an olfactory test? Gary has, and Vivian has. Was it similar to what Michelle just cited?
Yes, it was. I had it as part of a research study.
Yeah, me too.
Where they were using that to test our sense of smell. And I had the same sense that, I mean, it told me that I couldn't smell coffee. What did I smell in my kitchen that morning, you know?
Also maybe flawed.
So for me, they just put things under my nose. I couldn't smell anything.
Right.
But when I wasn't there, when my husband makes coffee, I can smell it. So I can't say why I couldn't smell anything that they put under my nose, but they didn't make me pick it. They just wanted to know what I could smell. It was nothing.
So I can smell 1 in 20 roses, so I still stop at every rose bush.
That a girl.
In the great hope that it's going to be one of those ones I can smell.
I got one rose. One of my roses I can smell.
Treasure it.
I like the positive attitude. Good for you guys. I do get frustrated when I'm walking the dogs with my wife and she asks me to smell the flowers, and I lean in expecting to lie and say, oh, that smells great. But she knows better. Maria, questions?
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. This is really good. I'm newly diagnosed also, and just retired from Kaiser after 25 years. Actually, neurology was one of my departments, and 3 weeks before I retired, I got the diagnosis of PD. So I started learning about what, in our, neurology department in San Leandro and Fremont, there's like 7 of neurologists. We have a movement disorder specialist who happens to be my doctor, which has been really great. And our PT has been wonderful, and learning the system. It is a system. I think both within Kaiser and outside of Kaiser, you really do have to advocate for yourself, your primary care doctors, and it's a very busy system. So I understand how people can get very frustrated, but it's always really important that patient care and quality be extremely important. And I think PD Active is helping in that too, also to educate us in that. It's educated me in these last couple of months, and I was so scared. But I thank the panelists, because it's you that I feel like I need to learn from you. you know, like, you know, we can, you know, work with the physicians and we can help each other out. But, you know, I want to try to, you know, reduce the progression. And yes, my healthcare team and, you know, you're also important to that, but it's each one of you that it's your experience that I think has made it even more, helped me be even more of an advocate for myself, even though I understand the system, you know, as, you know, I mean, it was funny, you know, the chief of neurology, and I'd say most of at Kaiser, most of the departments have a movement disorder specialist. So if they say you may not need one, it's because there's one in the department, and the physicians within the departments do, you know, talk together. At least, you know, I know that from the service area that I'm in. And we'll know if, you know, who's the PT that's working with Parkinson's patients also, so you can ask those questions. And your primary care doctors are all, you know, the chart is very important for you to read. And I love the graphs that you can see when, you know, you do your labs and stuff. But I was also a question in terms of, I don't know if it's another aspect or support, but you know, there's kind of the regular kind of tests that are done, but again, I'm looking to try to stay as healthy as possible. So, you know, have you asked for tests that are more around your, you know, your vitamin D levels and your, you know, all kind of the things that are not usually on the normal formulary for getting labs done, just to kind of see what kind of baseline you're in. And I wanted to ask the panelists if you ask for any of those kinds of things.
I do get my vitamin D checked. I think that's really important for brain health, and vitamin B12 as well. So I do get those two checked because I take the vitamins and I want to make sure I'm getting enough of them and not too much of them or whatever. But outside of that, it's just regular blood work. You know, I just try to stay active, stay as active as I can, stay as positive as I can, you know, surround myself with people that care about me, stay involved, get involved in the community so you don't get too deep inside your own head, you know?
Yeah, because I find myself doing that. So
Yeah.
when you say you stay active, how active are you? Because I'm like trying to walk 5 miles a day. And I'm trying to
I walk every day, probably at least half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes. I cycle. If I don't walk, I will ride my bike, but I prefer to ride an exercise bike. I don't like being out on the road with cars. I cross country ski in the winter every weekend, as much as we can anyway. So that, you know, that's generally it. And Pilates. I do believe in strength training and things like yoga, keeping your core strong and just, you know, keeping your balance, because the number one thing you don't want to do is fall and break something because then that really sets you back. You have to be immobilized. If you have something fractured and you can't walk, or you know, it limits you. So that can really set you back with PD. So
yeah, my doctor just keeps saying, just keep walking, walk.
Walking's great. I say whatever makes you feel good, and whatever whatever you enjoy and whatever you'll do. You know, you don't want to sign up for an exercise that you're not going to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would add again the things. Well, the Pilates instructor, she actually teaches for PD Actives, Steph Camilla, every Thursday. But getting your core really in shape, I've noticed just being able to move around when I'm feeling pretty immobile otherwise. I can tell when I'm using my core more. So that's a huge thing. So I totally agree with whatever you like, but I would also say if you can supplement it at all with people who know Parkinson's, that helps.
For sure.
Thank you.
Well, we're sorry to welcome you to the team, Maria, but welcome nonetheless.
Thank
I will remind folks, so we're 5 minutes away from the end of our session, I'm sad to say, but I do see quite a few of these thumbnails on my screen here with couples or two people in the screen. And I just wanted to remind you that if any of you out there that don't have Parkinson's, there's Maria's significant other back there, have any questions for the Dans and the Marks, they are patiently waiting right next to their PWP with any responses for you. So if any of you have questions for the partner, chime on in. because we're running out of time. Or any
And-
other questions at all?
I
Kathy?
wanted to point out in the chat, I put a link to our past events page. So you can see our past events page with the speech pathologist and lots of other past events that we've had. And this will be updated by next week on the past events page. And then I also put the brain training with Steph Camilla. It's on Thursdays. You can click on that and you can read more about it.
Great, thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I can put a plug in for Steph. I've been seeing Steph for years. She's wonderful.
Let's see, while we're close to the end here, I'm going to teach people how to save their chat history if they are interested in that. But before we do that, Kathy and Kathy with a K and Carrie, may we put your email address in the chat so that folks can email you with specific questions on doctors and
Certainly.
names and locations?
It's already in there.
Is
but
it?
we can
Oh,
put it
you're-
again.
no, you're awesome. Thank you. All right. I see June. Maybe do you still have your hand up or is that an old hand? She's on mute. Any other questions from the folks we've got here right now? You can raise your Zoom hand or you can raise your human hand.
It's very much. what we do.
Okay. I've not been paying attention to chat. Monique and Kathy, if you see any questions in there that
One thing is
addressed quickly enough, then we can do that. Paul, I see your hand up.
I also say for people with partners that things can change in anybody's life. That's why it's so important to have friends out there that are also supportive of you.
Yeah.
Because you can depend on people
Yeah.
very much so, but you can never depend on life giving you what you might expect.
Yeah.
If that's clear, I'm not sure.
Good positive attitude, Paul. Things can change if you've got friends to lean on, right?
Yeah.
Attaboy, good attitude.
One thing I did notice in the chat is Andy did point out the use for a social worker and how I know at Kaiser they have social workers, and so social workers can support you and help you as well with your team and with getting in touch with doctors. I mean, they can do a lot of things, so that can be helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
Good observation.
And then that through the palliative care, if you get a referral. that
Palliative
can be
care,
helpful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one point that I think is very important for caregivers, your partners or whomever that might be, is that they really make sure that they take care of themselves, because
Good point.
there's caregiver fatigue.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you bring that up. That's a real thing out there, whether it's your significant other or someone you're paying to come in and take care of you. Both of those roles can get fatigued. And that might be a good way to wrap this up. I think I learned many things today. The chief among them was one of the first things we discovered, and that is that my list did not have on it partner as one of the team members. So for those of us that are lucky enough to have a partner at home, that's an important role. So to those partners out there, thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for being here today with us, Mark and Dan and Kathy and Carrie. Thanks a ton. It's been very educational and very helpful.
Yes, our
I hope you
pleasure.
all- I hope you all learned a lot. And Dan, thank you very much. And Mark, thanks very much for tagging along.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much and have a really wonderful rest of your evening. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Yeah, good
Night.
night, everybody.
Bye all.
Good night.
Take care.